Season prediction time, Miami Dolphins fans. How are we doing today? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. I'm actually going to be doing the season predictions a little bit differently this year when compared to previous years that I've done this particular video. I was actually recording the video the way I typically did it. And I realized about halfway through, I'm like, I am going into way too much depth on so many teams that are going to look a lot different, that are going to have injuries come November, hell, come week 3 or 4. So I'm changing it up. You'll see what I'm going to end up doing here. Don't worry though, because if you're new to the Fins Up Network, this is the first time hearing it, but all the other viewers out there that have been subscribed, get subscribed if you haven't done so already. Definitely appreciate all of those that have. But every single week leading up to that week's game, I do 2 preview videos. If I have a guest, sometime I've done 3 as well. So stay tuned for those. We'll go into more detail, more depth about the games each and every week when it's more relevant. But we're going to dive into everything. I am going to do the win-losses. I will go and tell you which games I have them winning. But that's where I want to hear from you as well. Before I jump in, put your name next to a record. Let's see it. What record are you going to give the Miami Dolphins? Any playoff expectations, aspirations for even above that? Go ahead, drop your thoughts, drop your predictions in the comments as well. So, Dolphins fans, like I said, changing it up a little bit. Going out there right away and saying, I've got the Miami Dolphins at 11-6. In a perfect world, I'd love to be in that 12-5 range. I just think we have a couple of small warts yet. And that's by that, I mean the offensive line that I think may end up hindering us a little bit in some of these games. So I've got us 11-6. I've got a win against the Jaguars. I've got a win against the Bills. I got our first loss coming on the road to Seattle. Got us with a win on Monday night against the Titans, win against the Patriots, win against the Colts, win against the Cardinals, a loss at the Bills, a loss at the Rams, win against the Raiders, win against the Patriots, a loss in that Thanksgiving game against the Packers. Got us beating the Jets, got us losing to the Texans, losing to the 49ers, and then closing the season out with 2 wins back-to-back against the Browns and the Jets. Now, that puts us at 11-6. And now what I do want to talk a little bit about for a couple minutes anyways, a couple of tough stretches of this schedule. You'll see I had a couple of losses in back-to-back areas. But in my opinion, the 2 toughest parts of this Dolphins schedule is right after the bye week and then that final stretch of games. Because right after the bye week, we got an early bye week this year. It's week 6, I believe, is the bye week. And after that, we go on a little bit of a gauntlet because of the travel that we have to do. We're at the Colts. We're back at home against the Cardinals. And then we go to the Bills and to the Rams. Now, you can put the Cardinals in there and say, you know what? Well, how can that be a tough part of the stretch? I agree. That one's not. That is, weirdly, I'm going to label that as a must-win game. It's weird to have a must-win, especially against a team like the Cardinals. But at the end of the day, that is the one home game in that 4-game stretch. And it's a team that is significantly, in my opinion, inferior to us. We need to win that game, but you're going to see why we need to win that game, because the next 2 games are on the road against the Bills as we wrap up our season series against them kind of early, and then a Monday night road game against the Rams. And I have us losing both those games. So if we were to lose to the Cardinals and then have those 2 games following that, that is a tough stretch. So I think we kind of got to survive that stretch after the bye week at that 2-2 record, maybe at worst. But then if we look at the end of the season, that's what I'm trying to say. Easy for me to say, right? The end of the season run. It's a gauntlet. We've had some end of the season gauntlets lately as Miami Dolphins fans. We're at Green Bay Thanksgiving night, return home against the Jets, who should be improved. Then we're at the Texans. We're at home against the 49ers, and then close out the season at the Browns and at the Jets. Now, if there's one thing about the Miami Dolphins, it's closing out seasons has been a little bit of an issue. And then you think about what can happen when we play in some of those cold weather. And I know last year's playoff game against the Chiefs, that was like cold weather, but then some. I mean, that was an outlier situation. But the last couple of years, we've had that. We've had games in Baltimore. We've had games in Buffalo. And it's not that we've looked outright terrible in those games, but we've looked a little bit better. We've made some steps forward in those games, but the wins just haven't been there. And it's led to those late season collapses, saying Dolphins can't win in December, can't win when it matters, can't beat good teams. You got to end that narrative. And guess what? You got another chance this year, because when you end Packers, Jets, Texans, 49ers, Browns, Jets. Where's the easy win? Where's the Cardinals in that bunch? I don't see it. Maybe the Browns are taking a little bit of a step back, but at the end of the day, they made the playoffs last year with Joe Flacco. I'm not the world's biggest Deshaun Watson fan. I think Deshaun Watson is quite a bit better than Joe Flacco. It opens up more stuff for your offense. Plus, that Browns defense is good as well. So when you look at ending 49ers, Browns, Jets, you're playing against teams with good defenses. You're playing at the end of the year there, late December, early January, against the Browns and the Jets, where weather can play a factor as well. So those are those tough stretches. I think you absolutely need to try to have your record as good as possible, because that's going to be a gauntlet during that end of the year stretch. All right, so if we're looking at playoff expectations, made the playoffs last couple of years under Mike McDaniel, but it's just been that. 2 years ago, it was what? The game against the Bills, where we were in that game despite being down to Skylar Thompson. And then last year, obviously, the crazy cold game that we already made reference to, all the injuries up front on the offensive line, at rush, edge rusher, in the secondary, Jalen Waddle. We were completely beat up. There's a lot of excuses to go around for that. In my opinion, though, this is the year. You got to have the absolute bar for this team has to be a playoff win. Has to be at least one playoff win. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about this here in a second. But if you think about Super Bowl aspirations, I look at the Miami Dolphins and say, yeah, there's a chance, but what gets me is that wart that we keep coming back to, which is the offensive line. Now, I know that Butch Berry worked a little bit of magic last year. We kind of had a mismatch here and there, filling in guys because of injury and performance. He did pretty well last year, and I thought all offseason, like, that's a pretty glaring wart. We're going to overcome that. I would take last year's offensive line over this year's offensive line. Somehow we didn't address that, and I'm hoping that it doesn't come back to bite us. So that's why when I think about playoff aspirations and Super Bowl aspirations, it's like, well, they're there. I think we can do it. But at the end of the day, this teams in the NFL, they go as your quarterback, as your offensive line, and then as your defense go as well. I love our quarterback. I really like our defense. I absolutely do not like our offensive line. So that's where I say, let's get a playoff win. Hopefully a Super Bowl. I mean, who are we kidding? We're Dolphins fans. But at the end of the day, maybe this is the year where we get over that hump with the playoff win or two. And then this offseason can be, you know what? Let's shore up that offensive line. And then maybe 2025 is when we are truly ready to compete. Like I said, I wouldn't rule us out. It's just, I think there are some more complete teams in the NFL that are a little bit more ready to take that next step. All right, let's talk about a little bit of some of the fun stuff, some of the accolades as well. So I'm going to make a Pro Bowl prediction. I know the game's meaningless, but it's fun to get our guys in there as well. I've got Tua, Tyreek, Alec Ingold. He always feels like a shoo-in. I got Jalen Ramsey. I think we're going to get a big year from Javon Holland. Hopefully he can show out as well. And then I'm wrapping it up with Devon Achane. Now I think of Tua, he's been there. Tyreek, he's been there. Ingold, he's been there. Ramsey, he's been there. Holland is that guy that's knocking on the door. Hopefully he can get over that hump, be a little bit more consistent in the mix of those splash plays that we've already seen from him. And then Devon Achane, working with Raheem Mostert, who made the Pro Bowl last year, I believe, but maybe taking a little bit more of Mostert's of this workload, I should say, because I think Raheem Mostert's still going to get carries and Jalen Wright's still going to get carries. But it's a guy like Devon Achane who can get the carries, make the splash plays, and then hopefully contribute a little bit more on the receiving end as well. So just being a complete back, being a complete football player, maybe getting him in there as well. So that's what I've got for Pro Bowlers. Drop yours in the comments as well. Would love to see who you guys have in that category. I'm not going to outright say that Tua's going to win the MVP, but I wanted to at least talk about the MVP odds. I actually correctly predicted Lamar Jackson last year. And full transparency, I have a small wager on Tua Tagovailoa winning it. And like I said, it's very small. But at the end of the day, his odds are plus 2,000. Now, the players that are ahead of him, Patrick Mahomes, understandably. Josh Allen, we'll see. Joe Burrow, we'll see. Lamar Jackson. CJ Stroud, we'll see. Justin Herbert, somehow. And then you've got Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, and Jalen Hurts. All those are guys above Tua. If you're a gambling person, I don't mind sprinkling a little bit of money on Tua's MVP odds. There's a lot of great talent in this league. Injuries can derail everything, but at plus 2,000, I think that's some pretty solid value. Now, if you really want to get crazy, Tyreek Hill's MVP odds are at plus 9,000. It's typically always going to go to a quarterback. I wouldn't suggest doing that. But if you're looking at him from the offensive player of the year standpoint, he is at plus 750, which is the second best odds after Christian McCaffrey, who's at plus 650. So the Vegas odds makers have Tua kind of in that mix with the Love, the Purdy, the Hurtses of the world. But at the end of the day, they really think Tyreek Hill is one of the top favorites for offensive player of the year. So you're not getting the biggest bang for your buck, but still at plus 750. That's pretty solid. Jalen Ramsey is actually plus 4,500 for defensive player of the year. Obviously, quite a few ahead of him. If you really want to drop some money on there with a huge return, Jalen Ramsey's at plus 4,500. Mike McDaniel is plus 2,000 for coach of the year. That's always a tough one to predict, but I thought it was curious to say that. And then the other one that stood out to me was Chop Robinson at plus 1,100 for defensive rookie of the year. I've been teetering on that one for a little while. I kind of want to do it, but at the end of the day, part of me is like, Ben, you're a Dolphins fan. You're just doing that because you just want to cheer for your guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. So just wanted to throw that out there. Let's go into division winners and then the way too early Super Bowl prediction as well. In the AFC, in the North, I've got the Ravens. South, I've got the Texans. East, I've got the Dolphins. West, I've got the Chiefs. In the NFC, in the North, I've got the Lions. South, the Falcons. East, the Cowboys. West, 49ers. If you've got thoughts on that kind of stuff, would love to hear that as well. And like I said, we got to give a Super Bowl prediction. I know you at home probably have some mind that you think's going to win the Super Bowl, even if it's not the Miami Dolphins. It's way too early. Things can happen, but hey, it's entertainment time. We're right before the regular season. So I have got the two teams that were in the championship games last year that ended up losing, taking that next step and becoming that team that represents their conference in the Super Bowl. So I'm going Ravens versus Lions, and I have the Baltimore Ravens winning it all. But like I said, I am not opposed whatsoever of people saying, you know what, let's go all out homer. Let's give it to the Miami Dolphins. But like I said, it's not that they're a crazy long shot in my mind. I'm hoping, obviously, that they can contend for a Super Bowl. Wouldn't be surprised if we can make a little bit of a run. The thing that gets me, I'm a broken record, that offensive line. I just don't know if we're quite there yet with that offensive line. But hell, go out there and surprise me, offensive line. Do it. And I think the biggest thing, one thing I wanted to add here, like I have a team like the Ravens representing the AFC. We can beat the Ravens. I know we didn't do it last year, but we can beat the Baltimore Ravens. But where I think it gets kind of important is at the end of the season, and Mike McDaniel talked about this. Let's get them at home. Let's take care of business in the regular season. At the end of the regular season, when we are leading the AFC East and when we are in contention for that number 1 or 2 seed, get these teams at home. Don't go to Kansas City where it's negative 30 and people are losing their fingers and toes because of frostbite. Avoid that. Play them in Miami, and that's your ticket. That's truly what I think this team needs. It's just do some things to help you out. There's nothing wrong with taking advantage of home field advantage. All right, I've ranted long enough about that. I just had to get that off my chest. Dolphins fans, week 1 is quickly approaching, which means the preview videos for the Jacksonville Jaguars will be coming out shortly, as we've done in the past. We'll talk key matchups, top players to watch, complete in-depth previews, predictions for all that stuff. I will be taking viewer questions as well for the final preview and prediction video. So stay tuned, get those questions ready, as I will be looking for those as well as we get a little bit closer to that game. We'll wrap it forward there today, Miami Dolphins fans. Happy NFL season. And until next time, fins up.